The global economy is already going through a turbulence, but on top of that, there is something more alarming about to happen. Experts have suggested that the Chinese economy may collapse soon, which in turn will affect the global market adversely. But what led to such a rough patch in the Chinese economy? In today's video, we'll be sharing with you the latest wave on the Chinese economy collapse, so make sure you stay tuned till the end. As the COVID-19 outbreak continues to ravage China, the country's economy is beginning to feel the strain. The lockdown measures imposed by the government in an attempt to control the spread of the virus have led to a sharp slowdown in the economic activity, with businesses across the country shutting down or scaling back operations. The International Monetary Fund has lowered its growth projections for the China's GDP in the 2022 and 2023 as a result of the outbreak, and it is estimated that the country's economy could contract by as much as 6% in the first quarter of the 2020. This would mark the first time China has experienced negative economic growth since 1976. The COVID-19 outbreak has dealt a severe blow to the Chinese economy, and it is uncertain how long it will take for the country to recover. However, one thing is certain: the Chinese government will have to take decisive action in order to prevent further economic decline. The country's share in the world exports has quadrupled from 4% to 15% last year, while the US saw a decline in the percentage. China overtakes the US in one more aspect. It has become a leading world economy in accordance with the purchasing power parity parameter. However, with the COVID-19 was a great shock for the entire world, the Chinese economy too bore the brunt. Today, China is the center of the global supply chain of the electronic products. In the wake of the pandemic, the world shifted to digitalization, 3D printing, and robotics that led to a decrease in demand for the Chinese goods. "A lot of us are standing by not knowing where to spend our money," said an executive at Qingdao Huba Asset Management Corporation, which specializes in trading. The government's efforts to reduce debt in the property sector, which accounts for about 1/3 of the economic output, led to a collapse in the real estate prices. The country's central bank has been injecting cash into the economy through open market operations, but that has failed to stem the decline in growth. Analysts say the situation is getting critical and that a full-blown financial crisis could happen if the government does not take more drastic measures. "The risks are rising by the day," said Leland Miller, CEO of the China Beach Book International, a research firm that tracks economic conditions in the country. "If they don't do something soon, we could be looking at an economy that is in free fall." Miller said the most likely scenario is that the government will eventually launch a massive stimulus package, as it did during the global financial crisis in 2008. But he warned that such a move would not only be a band-aid solution and would not address the underlying problems in the economy. The real question is whether or not they're willing to make the tough reforms that are needed to put the economy on a sustainable path, he said. Without those reforms, we could be looking at the years of the stagnation or even decline. There are several reasons behind this potential economic crash in China. China's huge debt. China's indebtedness is a major concern. The country's total debt has reached $28 trillion, which equals to almost 300% of its GDP. This is an unsustainable level of borrowing that puts the country at risk of the financial crisis. The country's debt has grown exponentially in recent years. The government, companies, and households are all saddled with huge amounts of debt, which is becoming increasingly difficult to service. According to some economists, they argue that the country's debt-to-GDP ratio is too high and that a swift reduction could trigger a financial crisis. Chi Lo, senior China economist at BNP Paribas, said that such a move would be implausible and could have devastating consequences for the economy. Other experts have warned that the Chinese economic collapse could have a ripple effect throughout the global economy. This is causing a lot of financial stress and could eventually lead to a full-blown crisis. Bubble in China's property market. The property market in China is also showing signs of a bubble. Property prices have been soaring in recent years, but now they are starting to fall. This is causing a lot of pain for developers and could lead to more defaults and bankruptcies. Household debt has soared to more than $10 trillion, and the ratio of the debt to disposable income has reached 130%. In order to limit borrowing by real estate developers, the Chinese government has issued 3 red lines and said to have enough cash on hand to satisfy short-term borrowing, debts, and liabilities. These restrictions have put immense pressure on developers who are now struggling to keep their businesses afloat. Reality Trek Vice President Darren Bloomquist said that all cash purchases peaked at 46% of the total sales in early 2011, but have been declining ever since, as distressed properties made up a larger share of the transactions then and have now largely been cleared from the market. As a result, the construction industry, which has been one of the main drivers of China's economy, is beginning to crumble. The ripple effect of this already being felt across the country, with businesses in sectors such as retail and tourism starting to feel the pinch. Bubble in China's stock market. The Chinese stock market is also in a bubble. Stock prices have soared in recent years, but now they are starting to fall. This is causing a lot of financial stress for investors and could eventually lead to a full-blown crisis. Investors are losing confidence in the Communist Party's ability to manage the economy, and many believe a collapse is imminent. The stock market has lost 10% since Morgan Stanley issued a negative outlook on the Chinese economy, and Citigroup has joined them in their pessimistic view. China's crackdown on the tech sector has backfired, with Didi Group being asked to delist from the US stock exchange. Weibo Corp is also under fire for content published on its platform. This uncertainty and instability is likely to continue. Investors would be wise to steer clear of the Chinese stock for now. China's export issue. The Chinese economy is highly reliant on exports, but with the global economy slowing down, demand for Chinese export is falling sharply. This is leading to job losses and factory closures, which is further exacerbating the economic slowdown. A global factory survey released last week showed demand weakened in July, with orders and output indexes falling to their weakest levels since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in the early 2020. China's official manufacturing survey indicated activity contracted last month, raising fears that the economy's recovery from the lockdown in spring will be slower and bumpier than expected. These developments have led many analysts to believe that the exports will fade as the global economy looks increasingly likely to enter a serious slowdown. This would be a major blow to China, which has been relying on strong export growth to support its economic recovery. It's also being hit by corruption. A lot of officials and businessmen are involved in corrupt practices, which is draining the economy of its resources. One of the most important reasons is China's conflict with other countries. China has been in conflict with the rest of the world for a long time, and this has caused an economic crisis. The Chinese government is to blame for this, as they have not been able to resolve the issue. This has led to a decline in the Chinese economy, and this is something that needs to be addressed. The Chinese government needs to find a way to resolve the conflict so that the economy can improve. Otherwise, the country will continue to suffer. Threats of a possible military conflict between China and the US are rising as Beijing continues to assert its sovereignty over Taiwan. In response, the US has awarded a $100 million contract to support Taiwan's missile defense system. This comes amid concern that China could order a strike on the self-ruling island. The decision to bolster Taiwan's defenses follows a warning by the Chinese ambassador to the US that the countries could descend into the military conflict over the independence of the government in Taipei. However, while Taiwan has proved to be the most troubling flashpoint in recent months, there are 16 other countries embroiled in the territorial disputes with China. As Beijing continues to flex its muscles, many experts believe that the Chinese economy is about to collapse. This could have devastating consequences not only for China, but for the global economy as a whole. The situation is extremely volatile, and it remains to be seen how it will all play out. However, one thing is certain: The US-China relationship is rapidly deteriorating, and this could have far-reaching implications for the entire world. All these factors are coming together to create a perfect storm that could eventually lead to the collapse of the Chinese economy. Such an economic crisis in China can have serious implications all over the world. It would lead to a fall in demand for the commodities, decline in stock markets, and would also cause job losses globally. So, it's high time that measures are taken to avoid such a situation. Otherwise, the global economy may have to face severe consequences, so we must all be prepared for the worst. So that's all for today's video. If you liked this video, then give us a thumbs up. And if you want to watch more videos like this, then hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification so that you will always be notified.